Autism is a spectrum condition. What I'm meaning here is that there are many different ways that your child will manifest, learn, or shows some signs of autism across a various wide spectrum of behaviours and what have you. The autistic child, however, will experience disordered brain development that is typically demonstrated through difficulties or differences in their ability to socialise with their peers, become nonverbal or verbal in their ways of communication, and stimming, which is defined as self-stimulation, which are the repetitive movements that you'll see classically in most autistic children. Although every autistic child is very unique, it's essential to recognise the signs and symptoms as early as possible to secure an early intervention services and plan to put into place to help you and your child to live the life to the fullest as much as possible. If you find any of the signs recognisable and that you suspect that your child does have autism, now is the time and chance for you to take them to a specialist that specialises in autism. The earlier the better for prevention of anything else that might arise later on in their life, as they say. Living with autism for many of us is difficult at any stage and age of our lives, regardless of it all, because obviously, as I said before in one of my videos, that most of the time autism has been solely focusing on children, not in teens and adults, due to the least information we have. So there needs to be more research based for teens and adults alike, as we feel that we are just aliens to others around us. Welcome back, chameleons. This is Diagnosing versus Self-Diagnosing, episode 3 of my series right now, and this one's based on how to recognise signs of autism in babies and children. Hopefully you're enjoying these right now, and if you do, let me know in the comment section below me so that hopefully I can just continue to educate and advocate to you guys, and also in saying this basically to help myself to navigate through life with autism and mental health on my journey, so that hopefully we can gain a better understanding between us, as we know that autism will be different for many of us. Also in saying this, that we need to just be respectable of each other's differences. So as you're hearing right now, I have mentioned that autism is obviously a spectrum of many sorts, clustered into the DSM-5 manual of what is needed right now to make life easier for some of the specialist team that needs to come about. Obviously, as I mentioned also earlier in the piece about Aspergers syndrome, is no longer a diagnosis, that obviously they have decided to put Aspergers syndrome into the DSM-5, which basically there has been a bit of controversial discussion over this matter about Aspergers syndrome, if it should have been in the DSM-5 or it should have been separated out or what have you. I'm a bit on the fence right now while I'm still doing my research here, so even though, like I said earlier also, if you have been following me, I was clinically diagnosed with Aspergers syndrome when I was 16 going on 17, and that was way before the DSM-5 came about. It was in the DSM-4. So just a heads up also, just in saying this, I'm going to be breaking down these parts right now that I'm speaking to you all today, is about maybe 2 or 3 methods, so bear with me on this. So method 1 is recognizing social differences. Method 2 is watching for communication difficulties. Method 3 is identifying repetitive behaviours. And method 4, accessing autism across the ages, along with tips and advice. So let's begin this, shall we? So the very first method, as I said, is recognizing social differences. So number 1 in this is interacting with your baby. As we know, it's really important when you give birth to a child and you have that connection, mother to child or father to child or what have you, right? A typical infant is a social creature by nature and loves to make eye contact usually. An autistic infant, however, may appear like they aren't interacting with their parents, or may look inattentive to most non-autistic parents around in their developing world. Making eye contact is like typically a baby can return the eye contact by usually 6 to 8 weeks of age. An autistic child, however, may not look at you or may avoid looking at your eyes whatsoever. Smile at your baby. A non-autistic baby can smile and offer warm and happy expressions by 6 weeks of age or even earlier. An autistic baby may not smile or even to a parent. Make faces at your baby. See if they mimic you. An autistic child may not participate in playing the copycat situation, or as this case they call it, mimicking your behaviours. 2. Call your baby's name. A typical baby will respond to it by 9 months of age. Typically developing babies will be able to call you mama or dada in return by at least 12 months of age. Number 3 is play with your toddler. By ages 2 or 3, a typical child will be very interested in playing games with you and others around them. An autistic toddler may appear disconnected from the world or deep in thought. A non-autistic toddler will be involving you in their world by pointing, showing, reaching, or waving by 12 months of age. A typical child engages in parallel play until they are about 3 years old. When your toddler engages in parallel play, this means they play alongside with other children in their age group and enjoy their company, but don't necessarily engage in cooperative play. Don't confuse parallel play with an autistic child not being socially engaged, however. 4. Examine differences of opinion. By around the age of 5, a typical child can understand you have a different opinion about things around you, so be, careful what you say about things. An autistic child tends to have great difficulty in understanding that others have different points of view, thoughts, and feelings than their own. They often appear to lack empathy for others, they reckon, but then again, most autistic children is quite the opposite. They don't lack empathy. If your child loves strawberry ice cream, tell your child that chocolate ice cream is your favourite, and see if you argue, or they argue, more importantly, or get upset that you do not share the same opinion as them. Many autistic people understand this better in theory than in the praxis. Many autistic people, or shall we say an autistic girl, as an example, might understand you like the colour blue, but have no idea that it would upset you if she wandered off to check out the balloons across the street. 5. Excess moods and outbursts. It's important to know when the difference between tantrums and meltdowns, and I clearly mentioned this in one of my video series, which I'll link in this podcast, or even just link it later on into the video once this comes to effect. So, in saying this, an autistic child may experience meltdowns or outbursts of extreme emotions that often resemble as a temper tantrum. However, these aren't voluntary and are extremely upsetting to the child. An autistic child experiences many challenges and may attempt to bottle up emotions to please caregivers. Emotions must be out of control, however, and then the autistic child, or the child in general, can become so frustrated that they engage in self-injury, which is known as self-harm, which then, therefore, it could be a classic example for most autistic will be banging their heads against the wall, or just banging their head, or biting themselves, or some autistic children may start to, pick at their fingers, or what have you. Some of these self-injuries may be harmless at first, and then some of them will be harmful, but you just, again, keep an eye out for these typical behaviours that they show, but don't forever restrain them whatsoever from doing this as an advice here, because this could make the situation worse. As well as in saying this, another situation to make it worse also, if you feel that this is not appropriate behaviour of what they're doing, of the self-harming or what, if you do not forever yell at them, that will make them feel even more frustrated and worse, and might tend to make them carry on that natural behaviours of this. So in saying this though, basically, autistic children may experience more pain due to sensory issues, mistreatment, and other problems. They may lash out more often in self-defense mechanism. Method 2, watching for communication difficulties. As we know, for many of us autistics, some of us will struggle with communication at an early age. Some of us may not. Some of us may just be really bright and can actually really get into it. So, again, as I said earlier, the earlier the better you can do all this, the sooner the better you can hopefully recognise the signs if they are autistic or not, or by just taking them to the specialist team that will then verify that it is autism or some other condition, because as I said before, many other conditions overlaps with autism. So in method 2 for the watching for communication delays, number 1 is coo to your baby and see if they coo back. Listen for increasing sounds and babbling as they grow. Children usually become fully verbal by 16 to 24 months of age. A typical baby will be able to share sounds back and forth with you, like sharing a conversation, by 9 months of age. An autistic baby, however, may not be verbal at all, or may have been verbal but then they lost that skill. A typical child will be babbling by about 12 months of age. 2. Have a conversation. Talk together about your child's favourite toy and listen to their sentences, structure and conversation skills. Typically developing children will have many words by 16 months of age, can create their own meaningful two-word phrases by 24 months of age, and have coherent sentences by age 5. An autistic child tends to misplace words in sentence structure or simply repeat others' phrases or sentences, called parroting, or in this case echolalia, which I have clearly mentioned in one of my videos, which I'll link in the archive or in the description box below me, nearing the time when this one goes live on my channel. They may mix up pronouns saying do you want pancakes when they are trying to say that they want pancakes. Some autistic children pass over the kid speak phase and have superior language skills. They may learn to speak early and or grow large vocabularies in their language. They may converse differently than their peers do. Number 3, try some expressions. Determine if your child takes phrases literally. An autistic child tends to misinterpret body language, not all, some, or even tone of voice and expressions. If you have a moment of sarcastic frustration and claim, "How wonderful," when you find your autistic child has used his red marker all over the living room walls, they might think you literally mean their art is wonderful. 4, check their facial expressions, tones of voice, and body language. Autistic children often have unique nonverbal communication because most people are used to watching non-assisted body language. This may be confusing to you and others at times. Robotic sing-song or unusually childish tone of voice, even into their teen or adult years. Body language doesn't seem to match their mood. Little variation in facial expressions, exaggerated facial expressions, or otherwise unique expressions. Method 3, identifying repeated behaviours, ECHOLALIA, or mimicking behaviours. Number 1, watch your child for unusual repetition of behaviours. While all kids enjoy repetitive play to some degree, autistic children will exhibit strong repetitive behaviours such as rocking, hand flapping, rearranging objects, or repeating sounds over and over again called ECHOLALIA. These can be essential for self-calming and relaxing. All children partake in some verbal mimicry until the age of 3. An autistic child may do this more often than others beyond the age of 3. Some repetitive behaviours are called self-stimulation or stimming, meaning that they stimulate the child's senses. An example of this, if your son wiggles his fingers in front of his eyes to stimulate his vision and amuse himself. Another example of stimming happens when the child hums to the exact or near exact pitch of an external noise, also known as auditory stimulus or stimulus, of something that buzzes or hums that the child can hear, like a bumblebee, a lawnmower, chainsaw, or even a vibrating cell phone. 2, notice how your child plays. An autistic child may not engage in visible imaginative play, preferring to organise their objects. Example, organising their toys or building a city for their dolls instead of playing house. The imagination is occurring inside their head. Try breaking the pattern, rearranging the dolls they are lining up or passing in front of them while they are trying to walk in a circle. An autistic child will be noticeably bothered by you interfering. Autistic children may be able to engage in imaginative play with another child, especially if that child takes the lead. However, these children will usually not do it on their own. 3, recognise special interests and favourite objects. Intense and unusual obsessions with everyday household objects such as a broom or a string or light facts may become a sign of autism. An autistic child may develop a special interest about a topic and gain an extraordinary depth of knowledge. Examples include cats, basketball statistics, the Wizard of Oz, logic, puzzles and checkers, and so much more. A child may light up or open up when asked about these particular subjects. A child may have one special interest at a time or a few. They can change as the child learns and grows. 4, notice the need for routine. Many autistic children have a strong need for routines and consistency. Not all, but some. I noticed that some people I've been talking to don't like routines. That's fine. Obviously, I like to try and be in a set routine so that I know that, well, not basically in control, that I'm actually in my zone and that I can get everything done, especially when it comes down to my to-do list that I carry around with me or what have you, be it whatever it may be to carry on throughout the day. And in saying this, for the children, they may show exaggerated reactions or process to changes in routines. For instance, if you always walk with your child to school, taking the same route, trying to change it up, an autistic child may become very resistant and upset by this sudden change of routine. Routines may have to do with order of daily tasks, but they may also become verbal, such as asking the same questions repeatedly, have to do with food, only eating foods of a certain colour or texture, clothing, only wearing clothes of a specific fabric or colour, the location of furniture, and so on and so forth. Routines can be very comforting for an autistic person. The world can seem unpredictable, confusing, and scary to this person, and a routine can give them some sense of control and stability, which I was trying to clearly mention just now. Number 5, look for heightened and diminished sensitivity to sensations. If your child shows unusual discomfort to light, texture, sounds, taste or temperatures, talk to your doctor. Autistic children may overreact to new sounds, for example, a sudden loud noise or a vacuum cleaner. Textures, example, wires, an itchy sweater or a form of a sock, etc., etc. This is because the particular sense is magnified, so it causes real discomfort or pain to the autistic child. Method 4, assessing autism across all ages. 1. Know when autism may be noticed. Some symptoms are clear around 2 or 3 years of age. Beyond that, a child may be diagnosed at any age, especially during a transitional stage, e.g. going to high school, moving house, or any other stressful periods in their life. Excessive life demands may cause an autistic person to regress in order to cope, causing concerned loved ones to seek a diagnosis. In some children, signs may be noticed in the first 1 or 2 years of their life. Some are not diagnosed until college, when their developmental differences become specifically obvious. And this goes for autistic girls, apparently. Sadly, for us autistic girls, we get diagnosed at a later age because of how certain conditions that overlaps again, and how good we are in masking and camouflaging our kind of behaviours and what have you, while we're trying to act normal in the neurotypical world. And saying this, basically, for many of us that are autistics in the female realm, I noticed that it can be really stressful, because obviously we're trying to be like the neurotypicals, mimic the behaviours, ECHOLALIA and all this nonsense, and saying this, that basically that many people may look at us oddly, because obviously we're not acting like the same as in dressing up like you guys, so to speak, but in a way of just maybe thinking, the word I'm looking for here is basically not camouflaging as such, but shapeshifting. So we are obviously observing the environment, observing the people that is inside that environment, watching how they act, speak, talk and think, and then we think it's deemed appropriate, and then we'll go and do this. And this goes for also autistic males, but more specifically for autistic females though. However, we actually also, in saying this, we have some forms of mental health disorders. I have mentioned some of this also on my video and inside my book, which you can clearly find on Amazon, Life of an Aspie, looking inside the life of Aspergers syndrome or something like that, which I'll link in the description of this podcast as well. So, in saying this though, we need to know, for number 2, know your childhood milestones. With some variations, most children meet developmental mental milestones following a specific pattern. Autistic children, however, may meet these milestones later than your normal average Joe Block. Some may be pressures, and their parents may consider them a struggling or introverted gifted child. However, by age 3, children are often able to walk stairs, work with simple dexterity toys, and play make-believe. By age 4, a child can retell their favourite stories, scribble and follow simple directions. By age 5, a child can generally draw pictures, talk about their day, wash their hands, and focus on a task. Older autistic children, however, and teens may exhibit strict adherence to patterns and rituals, engage passionately in special interests, enjoy things that aren't typical of their age group, avoids the eye contact, and be highly sensitive to touch. 3. Watch for loss of skills. As I said before, some autistics may lose their sense of their skill sets and what have you, but that doesn't always happen, but it does for some. Speak to your family doctor if you have any concerns at any point of your child's development stage when they're transitioning. Don't forever delay if your child experiences a loss of speech, self-care skills or social skills at any age either. Most skills that are lost can still be there and can be regained if you, again, try to be patient enough with the children around you that you suspect that is autistic, and actually just give them more quality time and actually engage with them and do the normal everyday stuff that normal neurotypicals do. So my tips here is, studies have shown that autistic children benefit from treatment, often special therapies and help in schools, which depends which country you are in, obviously. More than they begin their treatment at a younger age. Autism is believed to be more common in boys than girls, sadly. Experts are realizing now that autism in girls may be overlooked in diagnostic criteria, however, especially since girls are more likely to be known for as being well behaved. Aspergers syndrome used to be a separate classification, but now falls under the autism spectrum condition category in the DSM-5, which I clearly mentioned earlier. Many autistic children experience related medical conditions such as anxiety, depression, gastrointestinal disorders, seizure disorders, sensory processing disorders, and pica, which is a tendency to eat non-food items beyond the typical developmental habits of toddlers who naturally put everything in their mouths. And lastly, but not least, as a tip here, vaccines don't cause autism. I can't stress this enough. I have shared this a few times on my channel, especially about this, and hopefully I'm saying this, that it will come into full swing, that we can agree to say that it doesn't cause autism. So this ends the topic about how to recognize signs of autism, and I'll be back with you shortly. Also, find me. This again will be listed in the socials, but just to tell you right now is this is my Aspie.answers. My Twitter again will be Aspie Answers, which are both capital A. Spotify obviously is Aspie Answers, which is capital A, capital A. Patreon is my crowdfunding page right now. You find me on patreon.com, Aspie Answers. For those of you who don't know what Patreon is today, those who are listening that are new, I have this set up for funding for future projects like this one of my podcast versus my merch that I've been designed. It's like a crowdfunding page or funding page for creators like me, or content creators, music creators, whoever it may be, seeking out funding for themselves in a way of maybe they need extra equipment for their cameras versus maybe their radio equipment if they were doing something similar like I am doing today, or covering their rent, travel costs, what have you. And in saying this, also basically for the merch, you'll see me basically maybe wearing it once in a while on my YouTube channel, as well as maybe, you know, out and about in public. And so in saying this, my merch site is .com, life-o-and-Aspie. So this wraps up everything. I want to thank you all for listening right now. Follow me on the socials that were listed below. Subscribe, share this podcast to friends and family. If you want to, feel free to become a patron to support this future project, as well as many others that is in the works as of this time. Feel free to donate, big or small, with me and the journey of it. And also my merch obviously will cover the cost for this as well. So I'll catch you all again on the other side. Aspie signing out for now, and bye.